So first, I wanted to mention that we've got a presenter tonight from the League of Women Voters, Vicki Paulison, and I'll introduce her in just a minute. But I want to make it clear that Vicki is not here tonight to talk about how to get more Democrats elected, or how to get more Democratic districts, or how to find more Democratic voters. She is here as a representative of the League of Women Voters of the Ann Arbor area. It's a nonpartisan political organization that is dedicated to making democracy work. This is their words, and I totally agree with them, through voter education, issue advocacy, and citizen participation. And that is what Vicki's going to be here to talk to us about tonight, is citizen participation. And in this particular instance, that participation is critical. Our goal as the Western Washtenaw Democrats is to try to get more Democrats elected in this area, and to try to create more Democratic, or at least more balanced districts. Vicki's going to talk tonight to us about testifying in front of the Michigan Independent Citizens Redistricting Commission. But before she does that, I want to give you some things to keep in mind while you're listening to what she has to say. She's going to talk about how we got here a little bit, but I think most of us know how we got to the independent district, and that was by a lot of hard work. People like Carol. I think, Carol, you were involved in the work that the Voters Not Politicians did. So thank you. And I think because of that hard work, we're actually in a much better place, but we're not done yet. We have to make sure that all of us let the commission know what's important to us in redrawing the districts. They are having hearings where we can make our voices known. And it's important that we talk to them about what's important to us, why we think a district might be better drawn one way or another. And just as an example, and I've done a little bit of talking about this to some people, both in an email and a little bit on Facebook. Our state Senate district, which is currently the 22nd district, is drawn very much to make sure that those of us who vote as Democrats don't really have a say in our representation. That's also true of our 7th congressional district, as Gretchen can attest to. We really do not, our votes don't really count in those districts. And that was very much done on purpose by the Republicans in our state legislature, because they've been in charge of drawing the districts all this time. They made sure that they drew the districts to get as many Republicans elected in the various seats as possible. My goal is not to necessarily make sure that we get as many Democrats elected. I should say, yes, that is my goal. But what I really want is to see fair districts. One of the things that I love about the state House district that we're in, the 52nd district, is that it is an extremely fair district. It is drawn to the point where it is almost 50-50 Republican to Democratic historical voting voters, which means that the person who represents us has to appeal to everyone, for the most part, has to be able to reach across the aisle and make sure that people on the other side are also getting some of what they need, that it's not so hyper-partisan. And we are in an incredibly hyper-partisan world right now. I'd like to see us change that dramatically. So one of the goals that I have for the redistricting is to try to find a way to make our districts a little more fair, a little more even, so that we don't end up with hyper-partisan representation like Tim Walberg or Lana Tice, but we end up with more people like Gretchen Driscoll and Donna Lazinski. Those are the kinds of people I want to see representing us, because they actually care about the entire district, because they have to. So I want to make sure that while we are talking about all of the ways to talk to our commission, that we keep that in mind. But we also keep in mind that if you are going to go to talk to the commission, that you talk from your heart, your experience, and your interests. I was having a conversation with Joanne earlier today. One of the things that I have brought up about the way I'd like to see our district redrawn, rather than our state Senate district go into Western Washtenaw and up into Livingston County, I'd like to see it go over into Jackson County. And part of the reason for that is that we share a number of things with Jackson County that we don't really share with Livingston County. One of them that Joanne and I were talking about was our recreation areas. Waterloo Recreation Area covers northwestern Washtenaw County and northeastern Jackson County. There's also the Watkins Lake Recreation or State and County Park that is right on the border of Washtenaw and Jackson County. So we share some very strong interests in the environment, in our recreation capabilities there, that appeal to people who really want to make sure that we're paying attention to those sorts of things. So if that's something you're passionate about, you might want to look into that and talk to the commission about why that's important to you. You might want to talk to the commission about what's important to you in terms of commerce. I'm a small business owner. I have employees who live in Jackson and work in Chelsea. I have no employees who live in Livingston County and work in Chelsea. I don't know, I might know 2 people who live in Chelsea or live in Livingston County and work in Chelsea. One of them is a business owner who owns places both in Livingston County and Chelsea. But for the most part, we don't do a lot of our commerce between us and Livingston County. We do a lot of our commerce between us and Jackson County. And a large part of that is because of the I-94 corridor. It's a lot easier to get east to west on our side of the county than it is north and south. Trying to get into Livingston County from our part of Washtenaw County is lots of back roads or going way east to 23 and then north. It's a lot easier to get back and forth to Jackson County than it is to get to Livingston County. So that's why there's a lot of commerce. So that's one of the things that we have in common. If that's something that is important to you, that should be something you talk to the commission about. I'm going to recommend that everyone think about what's important to them about the redrawing, why it's important to you, so that if you're talking to the commission, you're talking about your personal interests. You're not trying to cover everything, but you're talking about one particular topic that's important to you. That way we can get a number of different people bringing up a number of different reasons why a particular way to draw a district makes sense to them or is important to them. I think if we try to have people talk about absolutely everything, we're going to dilute they're not going to hear us. So I want you to keep that in mind while we're letting Vicki tell us all about how to actually talk to the commission. So Brian, you have a question?
I just have a secondary point. The first meeting for public input of the redistricting commissions in Jackson, but we're not limited to that meeting. We can go to the one in Dearborn, we can go to ones around the other parts of the state and still present about our needs in Washtenaw. So
absolutely. The meeting that's coming up in Jackson County is on the 11th next week. We don't have the details yet. We are expecting them no later than 18 hours prior to the meeting. And as soon as we see them, we will blast them out to everybody. There is a place you can go on the Secretary of State's website to sign up for updates if you want, and I'll put that into the chat so you have that link. But Brian's right. You can attend any of the meetings. We are going on the assumption, though we are not 100% sure right now, that those meetings will have a virtual component where you can talk to them. We don't have the details yet, so we're counting on that. I'm not sure that that's absolutely positive yet. So If you're able to physically go to the Jackson meeting once it's announced, that would be fabulous. They will be, all of the social distancing and masking and all of that will be in place. If you're not comfortable going in person and we get what we hope for as a virtual capability, you'll be able to do that. And you'll also be able to do that at any of the other locations. The Jackson one is the closest one to us, and it's the first one. So I'd like to get our voices out there kind of early and often. So with that, I'm going to hand this over to Vicki, Dr. Vicki Paulison, who has taught chemistry at Eastern Michigan University for the last 27 years, is a graduate of the University of Michigan, is a member of the League of Women Voters of the Ann Arbor area, and is part of their redistricting team. She and her husband live in Dexter, Western Washtenaw, where they raised their 2 sons. So Vicki, I'm going to turn it over to you, and I'm going to shut up for a while.
All right, well, thanks for the introduction, and thanks for inviting me tonight. We'll see if I can share my screen properly. Okay, and you should, let's see, I want to slideshow from the current slide. And then one more thing. Okay, are you seeing a slide here that says criteria?
Yes.
Excellent. All right, let me get my other notes up. And I'm gonna, oh, no. Exit that. And we're gonna minimize that. Okay, so since you are all really well versed in why the new Redistricting Commission was formed, I'm going to skip to my slide number 20 here and talk about the criteria that the Commission is using and the process that they've been putting together. There is a meeting tomorrow. I understand that's going to solidify all of the not the requirements, but the suggestions for making presentations to them. So it is correct that you can go to any of the public meetings and make your pitch. You can also send things into writing. You can email them. There's a couple of different ways you can contact them. What the Commission has to follow, first and foremost, are these priorities. This list of priorities comes to them from the amendment. So these are in order of priority. So first and foremost, whatever lines the Commission draws, they must have equal population for each of the type of district. They must comply with federal law, including the U.S. Constitution and the Voting Rights Act of 1965. Each of the districts they draw must be contiguous, which means you can't grab a group of people in Grand Rapids and Detroit and put them together and say that's a district. No, this must be a group of neighbors. Third on the list is that the district should reflect the state's diverse population and communities of interest. Okay, so we're going to spend a lot of time here tonight talking about communities of interest because that's really your conduit to approaching the Commission. Fourth on the list is that they cannot draw lines that will show any kind of packing or cracking. That has led to gerrymandering in the past. They can't favor or disfavor any incumbent or candidate by drawing the lines. Number 6 is they shall consider county, city, and township boundaries. And 7 is that they must be reasonably compact. And notice again, 3 up there is districts that shall reflect the state's diverse population and communities of interest. Now, the Commission was formed in the fall. They started having their first meetings in September of 2020. They have spent a lot of time educating themselves, hiring advisors and lawyers to make sure that they are going to be following those priorities. The next step for them is to have public input. So they have scheduled so far, I think it's 16 public hearings scattered throughout the state. They are hoping to have those in person. Presently, they're scheduled to be in person. They are going to have a virtual component. The people who are there in person will be presenting first, and then the people who are online will be presenting afterwards. The presentations, when given orally, are going to be limited to 2 minutes. Okay, 2 minutes. So a person can go there and make their pitch for their community of interest. The Constitution requires that after they draw their first maps, they must then have 5 meetings, public meetings, to show the maps that they've come up with and explain them and have more input from the public. You can also, as a member of the public, put in writing what you feel would be appropriate for your suggestion for district lines. And all of the information that the commission gathers has to be transparent, has to be published. So after the plan is adopted, okay, and when all of this is said and done, they will make public their reasons for doing so. This is a very different process than what's been done in the past. The League of Women Voters is monitoring the commission's meetings to make sure the law is followed. It's coordinating with the key staff there, and they're really making a real effort to educate the public about communities of interest. Okay, it's a brand new concept in the state of Michigan. The whole process is brand new to the state of Michigan because it's being written right now, right, by the commissioners. So our goal is in helping these communities self-identify and then help them in their participation at the public hearings or in their written testaments. So we need to know here, what are the communities of interest and why they matter. So it is as a member of a community of interest that's your conduit to approach the commissioners. Okay? The communities of interest are going to have a profound impact on the drawing of maps. And remember, they are 3rd in the list of 7 priorities. So we can look to the Michigan Constitution where it says that communities of interest may include but shall not be limited to populations that share cultural characteristics, historical characteristics, economic interest. Now that's really rather vague and open-ended, right? But notice what's missing. What's missing here are shared relationships with political parties, incumbents, or political candidates. The goal here is to create fair and effective representation of the people within a community of interest by focusing on the bonds that make them a community. And these communities of interest are to be the basic building blocks of the legislative districts. Now, the MICRC is in a unique and some would say, enviable position because they are creating a brand new process in our state. They are creating the template that will be used for decades to come. Remember, redistricting must occur at least every 10 years following the census. So every 10 years, our congressional district lines are redrawn, and the state and the House of Representatives for the state are also redrawn. And all of that is driven by population. So it is the commission that's ultimately responsible for the process and determining the meaning and the application of communities of interest. Now, they realize that there's no need to completely reinvent the wheel. And while they cannot depend on other states' definitions of community of interest, they have tried to learn from the experience of other states that have used that term in their redistricting efforts. So in 2010, California was the first state to form a Citizens Redistricting Commission, and the MICRC has listened to representatives from California for a sense of how their commission recognized that. They've also listened to representatives from Arizona, and I think there's one other state in there. They've also looked to other sources for input, including a study done by the Center for Local, State, and Urban Policy, which is called CLOSUP, at the Gerald R. Ford School of Public Policy at the University of Michigan. So the commission is in an ongoing process of developing the concept of a community of interest. So we can best look at these by examples. Here we have a diverse list of examples, just relying on the guidance given in the Constitution about shared cultural, historical, and/or economic interests. Notice that a community of interest is going to represent a population with shared interests, and as such is going to be rather homogeneous. But it's going to be the collection of all of the community of interests that will represent the diversity of the state of Michigan. I have 4 specific examples for you. We've learned about these along the way in our efforts here. Some of you might be aware of the fact that there is a sizable population of Hispanics and Blacks who live in Southwest Detroit in what's been termed the most polluted zip code in the state of Michigan and possibly the United States. The zip code is 48217. That is a defined geographical region. It is a contiguous region where these people reside. They share that region with 3 dozen pollution-spewing facilities, including the Marathon Oil Refinery. People living in that area have suffered from poor air quality for decades. Now, the people of 48217 might wish to identify themselves as a community of interest to the Commission, so their voices can be amplified when it comes time to elect officials familiar with their unique needs and interests. Notice I said the community of interest must self-identify. There's no list of community of interest the Commission can go to. Communities of interest must self-identify. Then they're going to have to let the Commission know they exist and where they exist on a map and what their common bonds are. They might also want to add what are the communities of interest they would like to be connected to or separated from. Now, the population in zip code 48217 might not be large enough for a single district, but the goal is to keep a community of interest intact in whatever district they're placed so their voices are amplified. Okay? My second example is about Battle Creek, Kalamazoo area. It's a little similar to what Jennifer was just talking about. I went to a meeting where a representative from Battle Creek was present. Battle Creek is presently in the 3rd Congressional District with Grand Rapids, a group of people they feel they have little in common with. They plan to approach the Commission as a community of interest because they have shared socioeconomic status and a shared interest in the I-94 corridor. They're going to be asked to be considered a community of interest along with the Kalamazoo area. Because the people in Battle Creek, when they're looking for recreational activities or shopping or new dining experience, they head west on 94 to Kalamazoo. They don't head north to Grand Rapids. They have a shared interest in these things with the people in Kalamazoo. So they plan to make their community of interest known to the commissioners and ask to be joined with Kalamazoo in a larger group. We can also look at populations that are near natural resources. So think about those folks in the Midland-Saginaw area who were flooded by the failure of the dam at the Tobacco River last year. Those people live in a contiguous land mass, right? One of the requirements. They're all going to be affected by legislation targeting the rebuilding of the dam system there. They might want to identify themselves as a community of interest so they can pitch that to the commissioners. So they're going to have a voice when it comes to legislators and legislation involved in the repair and rebuilding of that area. We can also think in smaller terms. Where I live in Dexter, there's a neighborhood not far from me which exists over both the Webster and Scioto Township lines. It is currently split between the 7th and 12th congressional districts. Now, they could identify themselves as a community of interest. In this neighborhood, there are 400 homes spread on 600 acres. They have shared social economic status. They share the use of 2 small lakes and a river, and they have their very own sanitation authority. Now, they might want to consider approaching the commission as a community of interest and ask to be kept intact within the districts they are placed. Because remember, a community of interest is higher in the list of priorities than consideration of county, city, and township boundaries. So community of interest can be a very large, very small group, but really what they're focusing on are the bonds that hold them together. The close-up study I mentioned suggests these key qualities of a community of interest. First is a population that is self-defined by its community. They have shared common bonds, whatever they may be, they are shared. The community of interest is associated with a contiguous area, so they are neighbors of each other. And most importantly, the common bonds that they share are linked to matters affected by legislation. So think back to my 4 examples. People in zip code 47217 have a real interest in air quality. That's a legislative issue. The people in Battle Creek and Kalamazoo area have a shared interest in the I-94 corridor. Okay, that's a legislative issue. People in Midland and Saginaw certainly are affected by the legislation that's going to be involved in dam building and flood prevention. And even that small neighborhood, they're going to be concerned about water quality, of course. They have natural sources there, and they have their own sanitation system. So those bonds hold them together are also affected by legislation. By keeping a community of interest intact within their legislative district, that's going to provide those members more effective representation than if they were split across 2 or more districts, right? Voices together are amplified. And these communities of interest matter because they are going to be the basic building blocks for legislative and congressional districts. The goal here is to have fair and effective representation. The goal is to have districts drawn in a way that are going to amplify voices, and then that gives everyone a voice. Okay? The goal is to eliminate cracking and packing and create fair and compact districts, okay, where the districts are built to keep voters with similar interests intact. Okay? Fair and compact districts provide a way for voters to elect lawmakers that are familiar and concerned with their needs. Now, here's the question: how do you get involved in this? As was mentioned already, you can attend the public hearings. They are listed on the website. I have the websites here on this slide for you to take a look at. Presently, there's no portal set up. I think tomorrow the commission is going to talk about the go-ahead of putting the portal on their website so people can send in electronically their information, their testaments, about why they have a community of interest, what holds them together, etc. Also, they're going to be able to click on the meeting that they're interested in going to and attend that, so they would like to attend it. Sorry. You can also, instead of attending in person, as I said, you can email the commission information. The portal is going to be set up soon. That's going to make that easier for you. You can watch all of the meetings they've had in the past and all of the public hearings that they're going to be having. They're all going to be live streamed. You can watch those at the website or at this YouTube address. The commission has put together a Redistricting 101. That's an interesting thing to read. You can find it at that website. And the League of Women Voters is here to help you writing your testament, help you put together your testimony, and you can contact your local league here at this website. So I can probably get a copy of this and send it over to Jennifer, and she can distribute that, or you can just take a picture of the screen right now if you want, or we can come back to this. At these public meetings, what you'd want to tell the commissioners, and this is components from that close-up report, is first, of course, you're going to introduce yourself and identify the community that you represent. Maybe you want to represent all of the townships on the western side of Washtenaw County. Whatever your geographical region is, that where your community of interest is, you should draw that on a map and present that to the commissioners. What are the boundaries of your community of interest? And what are the common bonds that define your community of interest? And keep in mind, those bonds should be ones that can be affected by legislation. Okay? In priority, what are the particular government policies that are high priority for your particular community of interest? It's also suggested that you make a pitch for how your community of interest being kept intact is going to enhance the quality of its representation. You could also include, if there's any communities of interest that are nearby that would strengthen your group or weaken it. Like that group over in Battle Creek. They want to be associated with the Kalamazoo area. They don't want to be associated with Grand Rapids any longer. You need to provide a written copy of your testimony and any supporting facts. The more facts you have, the better that's going to make the case. You want to include a suggested map, that geographical region that defines your community of interest, anything else you can to support your point of view there. And of course, you've got to include some contact information because the commissioners might reach out towards you to get more information. So this is kind of a limited selection. It's going to depend on each person's need and how they're going to make their presentation to the commission. But I'm giving you here some guidelines here. So I'm going to stop sharing this now, and then we can, open up the floor to some questions.
So Vicki, I had a question that popped into my head just a minute ago, and now of course it has popped right out again. That can you pop up that last or next to last screen that you, or slide that you had? Because that'll remind me of something that you
of the
said.
CRC, or did you want the websites?
No. So what? It was more about when you're talking to the commission.
Okay.
So one of the last two slides.
Can you see it?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. And what is there one? Was there one after this or one right before
it?
it?
So here's the first four,
Okay.
and here's the last four.
Oh gosh. Oh, so I guess my question here was this effective testimony, is this just if you are writing into them, or so the thing that made me question, had my that I wasn't sure of, is providing a copy of your testimony. So are you doing that whether you are testifying in person or sending them something in an email, or?
Well, you can do whatever you want, but I think it would be smart to have the written copy also submitted. Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
I mean, this is really what you make of it. These are the suggestions from the people who have studied this issue, but you really do want to make sure that you have a name for your community. You outline the geographical region where that is, so they know who's talking about and what's holding you together as a community. Because they're going to be, they might even have communities that overlap. They're going to have to sort through what's most important here.
Okay.
So I had a question about that. So right away, the first thing when you talked about communities of interest taking priority over geographics, like in Washtenaw County, we have two watersheds. We have Huron River watershed and River Raisin watershed. So if you had those as two communities of interest, that would take precedence over having Washtenaw County all be in one district?
Oh, so what you're referring to is that, okay, so we can go back to that list.
I guess I'm trying to figure out, this is going to be really hard for them because I think it's going to be very tough to balance out.
You're right. And but up here at number 3, community of interest does take precedence over county, city, township boundaries. So we may no longer have, the boundaries along county lines. I mean, look what happened to the neighborhood I talked about. They drew a line right through that community because they went along the township lines. Well, if they're going to consider that whole community of interest, they're going to go around. They're going to have part of it overlapping 2 townships. So it's a totally different focus than what's been done in the past. And yes, the commissioners are really going to be challenged about how to keep all this straight. They do have a lot of things in place to help them, but they do have to follow this order of priority.
Doing like a point system, or how are they? I see huge challenges with this.
Yeah. Yep. Well, they have a lawyer that they've hired to make sure that they comply with the federal law and Voting Rights Act. That's first and foremost. They have to do that. They have to get the information from the census, which of course has been delayed, to make sure they have equal numbers of people in each of the districts that they're working with. They have to make sure their districts are, contiguous. Okay. And notice though, compact is down at the bottom of the list. So, just because it would make a nice square in Washtenaw County does not mean that that's the way to draw the district.
Wow.
Yeah, I think for me more that number 6 is the, that is so low on this list. Are there more after 7? Were there a couple more?
These are the 7. That's it.
Yeah, I'm kind of surprised that
Well, like Jennifer was saying, she feels Western Washtenaw County is more similarity with going west than more north. So you might want to cross that county line between the two counties she's talking about, Jackson and Washtenaw, and make it one district.
well, yeah.
and
At the same
what
time, I would also say there's a heck a lot more people that commute to the Ann Arbor economic engine than do to Jackson. I mean, like if you're going to make that argument, the argument would be more to keep it all in one district because most of the jobs are in the Ann Arbor area. Like, I mean, I agree with what Jennifer is saying about, I mean, this is completely like, we could talk about this for hours. But I mean, I completely agree if it was between Livingston and Jackson, if we had to move west, I would definitely agree because the corridor 94 is economic driver. But I also think that most people that live in Chelsea and Dexter would consider Ann Arbor more than going to Jackson. So,
so the reason, Gretchen, that I was talking specifically about the state Senate district is that the eastern part of Washtenaw County has enough population for its own senator and pretty much always has.
right.
The county is too large for one senator and too small for 2 senators. So some portion of the county must take into consideration or must be included into another county for the state Senate representation. And the way it's always been split is the eastern part and the more rural parts. Whether or not that still makes sense, I don't know. Or does part of the east
still for this most recent census still the situation, but we'll know.
Yeah, we don't know for sure, but from what I have seen, and none of it is absolute, that's still going to end up being very much the situation in Washtenaw County, because while the more rural parts of the county seem to have gained a little bit more population, it's still we have not, from what everybody's seeing, have not gained enough population in the county to have 2 distinct state Senate districts in the county. So somewhere there's got to be a line that takes into consideration other parts of another county or other counties, or however that's going to get broken up. Now, there is definitely an argument to be made with regards to our congressional district not splitting the county up for exactly those reasons that you were talking about, Gretchen. There is a great deal of economic interest between the various parts of the county. There is a great deal, I mean, we've got the 2 watersheds in common, and how do you split that up? So I can certainly see an argument for keeping the county whole in a congressional district far more than it has been. I mean, the way that it's been split has just been to make it better for the Republicans for a number of years. But I don't see any way around not splitting the county for our state Senate.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, and the other real challenge that the commission has is, they're not going to know about community's interest until they hear from them. And so, we found that most people don't really know that redistricting is taking place right now. They knew about the proposal passing, and they just figured out that the commission is going to do all the work. They didn't realize that they could be part of it. So that's another big challenge, and that's where the League of Women Voters and other nonprofits are really trying to spread the word, because unless you speak up, they're not going to know to consider you as a group.
Carol, you have a question.
So when we do our testimony, are we having to zero in on the different, the 22nd district, the 7th district, or we're just giving it in general?
So you're going to want to state your region of interest. and why you think that that region of interest should be held together. I would even eliminate district lines and names and numbers
Okay.
because they don't matter anymore.
Okay,
You draw everything, probably. But you need to have some kind of name for your community. And realize, remember, this cannot have any favoritism toward any political group. So, you know, like I say, you might want to talk to the supervisors in the townships that you're dealing with, and maybe have a coalition of the townships, and present that as a community of interest. I mean, you can go and just make your own map, but it's going to be more impactful if you have more people and you have some data to back all that up.
okay.
So
Could
Vicki,
Can
do
I just ask
you-
one other question? Can a community of interest be the underserved population in Washtenaw County that does not have broadband?
Yeah, so you'd want to say that this group of people underserved for broadband are in this region. We're over these townships or these cities or whatever you want, you know, how you're going to designate that. And you say our primary concern here is that we have no broadband. We don't have any public services. We don't have, there is a group working with a group over there in the Ypsi Landing area, actually, and these are their concerns. So yeah, those are common bonds that are holding that group of people together.
Okay, thank you.
So Vicki, pointing out the variety of things that hold the community together is going to be most important. So what I had been concentrating on was sort of the individual things that are important to you as somebody in that community. But it sounds like you're talking more about all of the interests. So out here, we talk about lack of broadband, lack of public transportation, our rural characteristics, our, the variety of things that make us very different in this part of the county from, say, the eastern part of the county. That that puts me in a bind, because if I want to convince them that the county should be kept together for our congressional district, the arguments that I'm making for why, well, I guess, again, our state senate is going to have to be split regardless. The county, there's no way to keep the county under one state senate or even two state senate seats. So in that instance, there are interests that we have that make sense to combine with potentially Jackson County or Livingston County or Lenawee County, that the transportation issues, the broadband issues, the rural characteristics, that kind of stuff. But there are also economic reasons to keep the county together where possible. So I think we've got two arguments to make there.
Yeah. Yes. And I guess you'd have to decide and talk to the people of the community and see what's most important to all of them somehow. We have sent letters to all the supervisors of all the townships. They should be aware of the process and how they can participate in it. So the townships might be a way to start reaching out to people in those areas and solicit some input. I mean, the first meeting is May 11th. And frankly, I'm going to attend and sit there and see what's happening. I mean, I wouldn't want to be the first people to go there, because, well, you're going to get a sense of what people are presenting and how they are and how the commissioner is listening and what they're looking for a little bit. I'm hoping like crazy after their meeting tomorrow, they put all the information that they've gathered. I've read what they're expecting to have at these meetings. I hope they put it out there on the public so you all can see it as soon as possible. Because, you want to go there trying to meet their expectations. And if they haven't published them yet, it's kind of hard to do. But you want to see what's going to be done at these meetings.
Brian, you had a question?
I actually had something I can share on the screen.
Okay, I will stop sharing then.
I did try to take a certain approach to saying, okay, Washtenaw County, how does it play out? if I start looking at it through that lens of communities of interest. And this is kind of what I came up with. There's kind of three groups, you know, kind of the Ypsilanti sphere, the Ann Arbor sphere, which extends into Pittsfield and Scioto. And then there's what I call rural small town Washtenaw. And I was starting to look at some of the numbers, the votes cast in, 2020. This isn't complete yet, but that's one way to slice it, to think of it, if you're trying to think of it visually, this is one way to think of it. Now, does Ann Arbor Township, does the southern part of Northfield potentially fill in, feel closer to Ann Arbor or not? I don't know. I was just saying, okay, based on what I know, this is one way to do it. I just wanted to share that visually.
And see, that's a great tool. The commissioners are asking for maps, hand-drawn or computer generated, whatever, that will help them identify these regions. So this is a great tool to use. We have reached out to the Washtenaw County Farm Bureau. They're a very active group representing the farmers. And I imagine that they're going to make a presentation to the commissioners on behalf of the farmers in the area. So it'd be kind of nice to know, you might want to talk to them and see how you can coordinate with them, Yeah,
the base map that I used was something the county produces. They have a special zone on their website where you can look at the districts for, state senate, state rep, so on and so forth. So I just took a blank map and said, based on what I think, let me do a little coloring.
That map looks like the 7th and the 12th.
Right.
If you went on that, it's exactly what the 7th is right now, all the small rural towns. So
I've got that in another part of that presentation I'm going to share again, because I went through and just said, okay, a lot of people are going to be asking about this. What does it mean? Here's the state house districts. Who's in play right now for those districts? Here's the Michigan State Senate, and again shows the western Washtenaw portion as being part of Lana Tice's area, plus Livingston County. The state, the U.S. House districts, which do curl around, like you were saying, but they also extend a little further, because you're talking about curling around Ann Arbor and going all the way up to Lansing and all the way down to Monroe and all the way west to Coldwater, practically to Sturgis, which is, in my mind, on the west side of the state. They would have more of a natural affinity to hang with Kalamazoo, in my view. And that compares to the 12th district, which grabs Ann Arbor but goes all the way down, into Wayne County, and then up into Dearborn and hits, Grosse Ile. Okay, that was obviously gerrymandered. There are different stats for those two districts. The 7th district is 90% white, or 89% white, 4% black, just under 1% Asian. But if you look at the stats for the 12th district, it's 76% white, 10% black, and nearly 5% Asian. This is all based on 2010 census data, because I haven't seen the updated numbers. But that was just my playing around. I was trying to figure out, I wanted to put an explainer up for the Dems to say, you want to see some things visually? Here, I'll show you.
Well, and there are a number of programs out there for playing around with redistricting. I was briefly playing with one called District Builder. It's districtbuilder.org. But what little I saw of that one is really just about counties and right now townships and down to um, precincts and that kind of stuff. But all of that's going to change. So that's a little hard to quantify in our new world. But at least it's a place to start, you know, to start playing with. And that one, District Builder, tells you, okay, if you're looking at the state Senate, there are 38 state Senate districts. They need this many, you need this many, this much population in each of them, and has the population based on the 2010 census, obviously, and you can kind of pick and choose your counties and townships, et cetera, to include in your district. So it gives you an interesting perspective on it anyway. But you know, like I said, everything's going to change. I do not envy the people on this commission. I'm not sure some of them knew what they were getting into when they signed up for this. It's going to be very, very difficult. And I think making sure that they understand, because, you know, how many of them actually live where you do? How many of them have the same understanding of your community? So without our input, they'll never have that understanding. So I think it's important that we do make our interests known.
You can go on their website and look at all the bios, and now they have videos from each of the commissioners, so you can get to know them a little bit. And they are from the scattering, and though it was a random selection of people, it still reflected the diversity, the demographics of the state of Michigan. So it wasn't completely random drawing. But they don't have a representative from the UP. There is no commissioner from the UP in that committee, which surprised me. You get one person from up there, but there isn't.
What's interesting, I do think like the communities of interest, you talked a little bit about the economic, and I still think that Ann Arbor is the economic engine for the county, and how we talk about that as a community of interest will be, that's going to be interesting. I wonder if Ann Arbor Spark or somebody's doing something with that, because I just feel like people are moving to Dexter and Chelsea because of the juxtaposition of Ann Arbor. Like they wouldn't be living in Chelsea if Chelsea was in Livingston County, you know, and over an hour away. So we have to, I mean, I'm very cognizant of that in Saline, because anybody that lives on the north side of Saline goes to Ann Arbor for dinner before they come to downtown Saline. And it's been this battle, I mean, for the years that we've worked so hard to say, think of your hometown before you make plans to go out for dinner, even though there's great restaurants in Ann Arbor, but we got great restaurants here too. Maybe not quite as many, but you know, so, but I do think that's something, I don't know how to talk about that though, but I think it's something we need to be cognizant of, because.
Heather, did you have something you wanted to say or have a question?
I just want to say, like, that's why I'm at this meeting. I mean, I agree with you, Gretchen. I would really like to figure out how to be a part of a group of people who says, like, this 94 corridor, Chelsea Dexter, I mean, I'd prefer it to be Ann Arbor, but if it's Chelsea Dexter, Jackson, that's better than random Livingston County, where nobody, like, you know, nobody in Washtenaw is going to Livingston County for everything. They're just not. And it's weird that we are in a situation where, like, we're like cut off from the rest of our county in 2 of our districts. It just bothers me.
And that's, I think, exactly how the people in Battle Creek felt. But they do have a representative that's going to go and say, look, you know, we don't have anything in common with those people in Grand Rapids. We really want to be connected to Kalamazoo for the exact same reasons, you know, social economic. That's where they go for, you know, new shopping, new dining, and all the recreational opportunities out there. All of those are, you know, very good bonds to hold people together.
Maybe we need to talk to the county commissioners that represent the rural. I mean, so fundamentally, this comes down to, like, I would never have moved to Saline if it wasn't right next to Ann Arbor.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't have. So, and that's a lot of people in my community. So how do we, and so that, you know, it's more affordable than Ann Arbor. It's a little bit of a different dynamic, but you know, the pitch that I made this pitch as part of when we first went up online is, you know, we have all the access to all the culture and sports opportunities in Ann Arbor without all the hassles and without the higher cost of living. In your backyard, 10 minutes, you go 10 minutes north, you got Ann Arbor, go 10 minutes south, you got sprawling farm fields, you know, so somehow we have to figure out how to tap into that, because otherwise, like, I mean, I personally don't have an identity with Jackson. Like,
No, and I get that, Gretchen, but again, we've got some competing interests. I mean, absolutely.
this is the lack of investment. I mean, this is the tragedy, and that's why we're partly where we are today, but the lack of investment in our rural communities across Michigan. And
Yes.
that is something, how we bring them like together. So our situation is different because Washtenaw County, you know, Ann Arbor is a very strong economic engine for the, you know, many different reasons, but so it's a little different. Our small towns are a little different than the rest of rural Michigan, but I think that's like one of the biggest challenges is, you know, doing this with having fair, like making sure we invest in our rural communities. That they have
So here's a thought that just popped into my head. I know a number of people in the Ann Arbor area, or who live in Livingston County on the 23 corridor and work in Ann Arbor. I know a lot of people who live on the 94 corridor and work in Ann Arbor, or even on the 12 corridor and work in Ann Arbor. There's an argument in my brain at the moment to be made for, if we're talking about our state Senate districts, and I'd have to look at population and all that, to include one district that is some of the eastern part of the county into the 23 corridor up into Livingston County, and one district that is the western part of Ann Arbor and west in the county. And maybe we get two districts that way. I don't know. You know, I'd have to look at population and all of that, but that may be an argument even separate from Jackson County, or maybe we have to pull parts of Jackson County in. I don't know. But there's where that whole, you know, Ann Arbor connection is to the north on the 23 corridor and to the west on the 94 and 12 corridors. So maybe there's some argument to be made there in terms of the socioeconomic interests of those groups of people and splitting the districts a little bit differently. But still, because our congressional districts, we have fewer than half the number of congressional districts in the state than we do state Senate districts. So obviously those have to be bigger, put the whole county, Washtenaw County, together again, because socioeconomic interests with Ann Arbor make a lot more sense than the way it's currently drawn.
Vicki, is there a timeline by which these testimonies have to be done? I mean, are we looking at 3 months, 6 months?
They have them set up over May and June right now.
That's it.
So soon, really soon. Oh.
Yep, the first one's May 11th next week, and they've got 16 or 17 of them for May and June, and they are scheduling into July.
Do we know of any groups in Washtenaw County that have already started?
I haven't worked with any yet. No.
No, not that I know of.
Wow.
I will say I'm hearing, not so much in Washtenaw County, but hearing that the Republicans are lining their ducks up a little bit already to get people to make their comments. So we certainly want to make sure we're not too far behind them. I'm going to put in the chat the website where you can go to get updates for from the commission on the meetings and their whole schedule. There's a lot of information available out there. So you can sign up and have them send you emails about what's going on with the commission. I think that would be a great start for everybody.
Yeah, most of their meetings are on Thursdays. If you want to sit and listen to the meetings, they're like several hours long. I've listened to several of them, but I'm always doing something else while they're talking. But they're all recorded, so you can go to them and maybe hit snippets of them from the past, or wait till the current one's recorded, then skip through parts of it. But all public hearings are also there too, that you can sign
And
up.
aren't they mostly during the day, Vicki?
Yeah, they are. Thursday after.
Yeah.
They're either Thursday afternoon. I think some of them are Friday mornings too, something like that.
So Vicki, given that short time frame, I understand the whole community of interest, common bonds and all that. But do we have to tie it to population? I mean, how do we have any idea how many?
Well, you
People
can't,
will-
because we don't know yet the population that's going to be in each district. So
So we don't worry about that. We
No.
stick with the other
Right.
criteria.
you
Okay.
know, right, your community of interest might not make up an entire district. Your job is just identify, here's my community of interest, keep it intact. Wherever you put us, keep us intact.
With other similar communities.
Keep
of
us
interest.
intact in one group as
Okay.
a group. So you're not chopping our group up into several districts.
Okay.
And again, like the neighborhood down the street here, that's a smaller group of people, but they could still, want to be considered as a group. They're never going to make up a whole district of any size, but, whatever group they're put in, they could ask to be kept, intact.
What is Loch Alpine?
Yes, that's right.
Well, we got our challenge put in front of us. That's for
No kidding. Yeah. Wow. All right. Anybody, any other questions for Vicki
Well,
or in general, Carol?
For you, Jennifer, I mean, are we going to have a follow-up?
I think we
call,
need
like-
to, don't you?
Yeah. Like,
Um,
we go back to our corners and come up with some ideas and then share them with each other, because we don't want a haphazard effort.
Right. I do think some brainstorming makes sense. Taking this conversation that we're having right now, pulling in some other people we know who have thoughts on this, and really brainstorming how we, what makes sense in terms of argument for community of interest.
I'd like to just throw out there, I think at a minimum, we should contact our county commissioners, the three,
Yeah,
Sharon,
Great idea.
and Jason.
Shannon and Jason and
Because, well, I mean, I know each of, there used to be this whole initiative to do like a regional plan for Cap Dart. It's a
Mhm.
concept of thinking regionally already established.
Right.
So maybe there's a way to like take some of those thoughts and I don't know. That
And
would be
not start from scratch.
yeah, no.
Yeah.
Right.
There's got to be some data to some of this stuff.
But the league has also sent notices to all the school districts in the area,
Right.
because the whole school district could be considered a community of interest,
Right.
and they have a defined geographical region and they have a lot of shared interests, so the school districts individually, or you could say, Dexter and Chelsea want to combined as a school district, say we're one community of interest, something like that. I mean, there's
Right.
a lot of ways to put it together. I don't see any reason to rush to May 11th, though. It's going to require some effort.
Great. Well, I think so I'm one of those kind of people that I like to watch what other people do and learn from their successes and challenges and then tweak it a little bit. And,
Mhm.
but, I mean, if you live in Dexter, just so, I don't know if you're aware, Vicki, but it's called Cap Dart, or it used to be, I think that it's still active, and it's Chelsea area planning team and the Dexter area regional team or something. So, but I do actually think broadband could be a
Oh,
community.
yeah.
And we could maybe talk to Ben. I know he's got that Michigan Broadband Co-op, which I think is just Washtenaw County townships that are participating. So that could be, something. Anyhow, I just I was a little nervous when Brian showed like this whole, like we're going back to where we were, which is the rural, which doesn't get enough attention. That's just a fundamental problem that we have in our state. I believe that until we do a better job addressing that challenge, we're going to continue to have a lot of divisiveness. So, but that map you showed, Brian, was like, whoa, okay, we're in the same place. So anyhow, we'll keep moving.
Yeah, I think we definitely need to set up another meeting pretty soon, and maybe take Vicki's recommendation, and as many as can at least sit in on the May 11th meeting and listen to how that proceeds, and take some pointers from that, then come together after that and try to get our ducks in a row.
And keep your eye on the website because, like I said, tomorrow they're having a meeting to talk about releasing the information they put together for the groups. And part of that, there was a mention of making the possibility for a whole group to do a presentation instead of one person. So single person's presentation only gets 2 minutes. That's it. But there was a blurb in there about having larger groups make a presentation over a longer period of time. So keep your eye on what they publish, because they do have well-defined criteria that they're expecting at these meetings. And I'm interested to see too if what they're gonna do about the groups, when they're gonna let them present. How's that gonna go? Because you might be more effective as a whole group of people, you know. I'm sure all of you know how to make a presentation. And, you know, I sent out information because we never know who we're working with, but, you know, how you want to make a presentation and what points you really you want to make sure you put in your written testament. Certainly you can add more to it, you know.
Right.
I'm sure all of you are really experienced with doing those kind of things.
Brian, didn't Chris say that they were going to be doing a coaching or something for people to speak next week at the meeting last night?
I think there's actually going to be a Washtenaw Dems meeting tomorrow night.
Right.
Where Robert George is going to talk about that from a perspective of, okay, I mean, what makes it sense for us to present and how to present. You know, what you've given us, Vicki, is great, but if we have specific goals in mind, how do we present to match those goals?
Right, and you want to collect data that's going to support whatever your goals are.
Gretchen, would you go back and just talk a little bit about what you last said about Brian's presentation made you think about the rural problem?
Oh, well, just like, I mean, the picture he showed of the three regions that, you know, the eastern side, Ypsi Township, the city of Ann Arbor, and then everything else. It kind of, I mean, it basically was exactly the map for what the 7th is. And so for me, it was like, well, I mean, I know so many people that are so frustrated that live in Washtenaw County about being in this district that it's way too rural for them. It's, you know, the values are not the values of the people that live in this district, in this county. So for the majority of people, I would say at this point. So the question is like, so how do we make, and I'm kind of talking through this, and it takes me a while to figure this stuff out, but kind of what my sense is that we need to kind of be tied to the economic engine of Ann Arbor, because there is an argument about the watersheds, like River Raisin. Saline is in the River Raisin watershed, not the Huron River watershed. And most of the 7th, except for the extreme western side, is in the River Raisin watershed. So if somebody wanted to make that a community of interest, that would split Washtenaw County. Personally, I don't think I would like to see that Washtenaw County stays within one congressional district. I think it's very confusing for people. And especially because it's like divided in the middle of Scioto Township. So that made it really, really hard, I think, for the people that vote. So, but my sense is that the community of interest is tied more to the economic engine and the educational priorities and systems of the Ann Arbor region than maybe any other issue. But I think we need to talk about this more.
Yeah, I don't
But-
disagree with you at all there, Gretchen. I absolutely, anywhere in the county, you can make a huge argument for Ann Arbor being the economic engine of the county and there being definitely a community of interest of the whole county. It's when you start talking about that absolutely, to my mind, is true for our congressional district. When we start talking about the other districts, the state Senate district, not so much the state House districts, because we're going to have a number of state House districts within the county, as we always have, but the state Senate district becomes the kind of the thorn
Right.
of, because of our population in the county, not having enough population for 2 whole state Senate districts. Where do we get the population from for a portion, for those 2 state Senate districts that we would need to have in the county? And that's the hard part to come to grips with. I totally agree with, as a congressional district, we really need to be combined. The county needs to be kept together.
We'll continue to work on it.
Uh-huh. All right. Well, Vicki, you have given us one heck of a lot to think about. So I am going to try to make sure I at least am able to sit in on the May 11th meeting to hear how that goes. I hope a number of others are able to do that. And then I think, Carol, yes, we need to come back together after that meeting and start talking through how we make sense of this, and how we're going to present what is important to us.
Jennifer or Brian, are either of you sitting in on the Washtenaw Den meeting?
I'm going to try to, and yeah, Brian definitely is.
That'd be great.
So,
Learn from what they're presenting.
yep, absolutely.
Yeah, it really does involve a real solicitation of the whole environment. What are other people thinking and doing,
Right, right.
That
Right.
would be really useful. Well,
And
good luck.
Heather, I
to all
did
of you.
see, I'm sorry, what was that, Vicki?
Good luck with it.
Yeah, thanks.
It's essential to the drawing of the maps to have participation. And,
Yeah.
I think I'm disappointed that the commission hasn't advertised this more. Why aren't they
Yeah.
advertising on television? You people can participate. Here's how you participate. They had a big advertising campaign about people applying to be on the commission. Why
Yeah.
don't they have one now, for the commission soliciting input? I think that's a disappointment to me.
Well,
Once
I-
That's a
that's
good
done on
question.
the 11th.
Yeah, I think it has to do with the fact they're still figuring out how to structure it. I mean, like you said, tomorrow, the meeting,
Right.
you got something, the first input sessions next week.
Next week.
They're still
They're like
sorting out all
unit.
the internals, and
Yeah.
that's taken them a little longer than perhaps they thought.
Well,
That's
they're forging a new path, so, I understand.
Just a quick, Heather, I did see your comment in the chat about getting some traffic data to argue the 2394 idea. I'm sure that information is out there. We'll have to see if we can find it, but yes, I think that's a fabulous idea.
You can get it from Watts, Washington Area Transportation Study.
Okay,
They're located over in Zeeb Road.
okay,
I can help with that if you want.
that would be awesome.
Okay. Is that my assignment?
It's your assignment.
Okay.
All right.
Okay,
Thank you, everybody. Thank you very much, Vicki.
Come on, Vicki.
no problem.
Everybody have a great evening. And we did record tonight, so Brian will probably not in the next day or two, but he will get it up on our YouTube channel, and we'll post a link to that so you can share it with friends and family. Okay.
And if you need
Thanks,
any
guys.
email links, let me know. I can send them to you that I had posted.
Yeah, actually, that would be super helpful, Vicki. I think some of those slides for us to refer back to would be really helpful.
Okay,
Okay.
I'll do that. Okay,
All right. Thanks, everybody.
you.
good night.
Good night.
All right, good night.
Bye-bye.
Bye.